Coco here, Georgia Aquarium.
Hi, Chris. Looks like we've got Dave Littlehill. You here, Dave?
Yes,
Okay.
here from Adventure Aquarium.
Great.
Got Jared Durrett from Ripley's Aquarium of the Smokies in Gatlinburg.
Great. Hi, George. We've all got all East Coasters so far. We're just going to give it a couple of minutes. More people trying to log on. So, all right, no worries. So I am going. Looks like Sandra already started recording, so that's great. I want to thank you all for joining us. It's really great to have everybody on this call. We've had some previous conversations with Beth and some of the other SSP coordinators to start developing this plan for shark and ray conservation. As you all know, sharks was one of the 10 species selected, signature species selected for SAFE. It kind of went in a different direction than the other species that we've been focusing on so far. And we have really kind of divided those species in half into phase 1 and phase 2 species. So, cheetah, vaquita, western pond turtle, African penguin, and sharks and rays are all considered phase 1 species. Phase 2, the remaining species, will be focused on more in 2017. And part of the reasoning for that is the learning process. SAFE is a brand new program. We're learning as we go. So we want to have as many resources in place and as much consistent processes and structure, if you will, as we move forward with the first species, the phase 1 species, learn from them so that when we begin implementation with the second phase, it might be a little bit more efficient and it might be a little bit easier moving forward. So we've kind of broken it up into those two groups. Now, of that phase 1 group of species, I think sharks has been the most challenging for Sandra and I at this point because it started in a whole different way than the other remaining 4 species. So I'm just going to move forward here. Sandra, you might have to move it because I don't seem to be able to forward the slides. There we go. But basically what we have done with the other 4 species, this is a SAFE process for the signature species. So when you look at, if you can see that red dot, the highlighter there, this process, the first part would be to connect all the conservation stakeholders we can possibly find. So of course there's a lot of challenges with sharks and rays because we're not just talking about one species, we're talking about the whole taxa. We're not just talking about one area like with western pond turtle across the states along the Pacific. We're talking about globally, and how do we look at our focus? The goal for all the other species was to connect those stakeholders together so that as a group they could identify and prioritize the conservation actions needed for the species or the taxa. What we then would typically do is have all of those prioritized needs identified by the group, which is not always easy to do. I'm making it sound much simpler than it typically is. And then align the AZA community strengths with those conservation needs. Doesn't mean everything that has been identified would be included in the SAFE Conservation Action Plan, but it would mean that those needs that align most closely with our strengths of our communities would be included there. One example that I'll give you that we didn't include something would be with African penguins. One of the biggest needs for African penguins right now is to cull sea lions in certain areas because the sea lions are consuming the African penguins. That was one project we decided we were not going to include in our SAFE Conservation Action Plan, as I'm sure you can imagine. That might be a little bit controversial. But we did pick other areas that we felt we could make an important influence moving forward. From there, we identified what those actions might be, as well as the field conservation actions, as well as perhaps public engagement actions, and from there developed the SAFE 3-year conservation action plan. Now, it's important to note here that these are 3-year plans. They're adaptively managed. You'll see that up here, and we'll talk about that. But we have a full intention of continuing to work with these species beyond those 3 years. The 3-year scope gives us a really nice tangible area where we can identify projects that are measurable and we can see outcomes. We can adaptively manage those projects. And as we come up towards the end of that 3-year period, our intention is to, again, reconnect everybody working on it, reassess the whole plan, and say, do we want to continue with this project? Do we want to morph it into something a little bit different? Is there something new that happened in the last 3 years that perhaps is a new priority and takes precedence over something that's in there? And ideally, wouldn't it be great if we could say, we accomplished this one, take it off, check it, it's done. So we do intend to move forward after those 3-year caps. Then have members of our institutions serve as the coordinators for the projects in that conservation action plan. I'll go into this in a minute. Sandra will be talking about this. And then from the AZA perspective, how do we provide facilitation and promote what you, the SSP, you as your institutions, the coordinators, the collaborators, how the projects are moving forward, how do we promote success stories? And then consistently evaluate and adapt the CAP as needed. So that's the basic process for SAFE with all the other phase 1 species. What happened with sharks was a little bit different because it was a different individual who was leading that versus myself. And so he took a little bit of a different approach than I did, more of a policy approach given the size of the taxa we're talking about and the distribution of the taxa we're talking about. And so it started as much more of a policy approach versus having individual projects to move forward to. We had some changeovers within AZA, and we decided to bring sharks and rays back into the same scope that we're using with the rest of the signature species. So the way that we did that was a little bit backwards because we didn't have the stakeholder meeting first with everybody involved. We really kind of aligned what's included in this plan with the new GSRI that was published not long ago. And then we have now since worked with Beth and SSP coordinators and some folks at WCS and other NGOs to say, do these projects make sense for them? And they all come to an agreement, including your representatives moving forward have come into agreement. These projects make sense and they're tangible and they're workable and we can obtain some good results from them. And so now what we want to do is bring you in as the next level of proofing, if you will. We want to make sure we haven't missed anything, and we want to make sure that we've got it framed the right way. We absolutely need your input and your buy-in in this whole conservation action plan in order for it to be successful. And so while we didn't do it the same exact way by doing all of this in the beginning, what we're trying to do is retrofit it, if you will, and get all of your input before we finalize what that conservation action plan will look like and what those projects finally are. So we're getting there. We're just doing it a little bit backwards, but that's okay. We'll still get there. One, if I could. I'm going to turn this over. Sandra, could you advance this? It doesn't seem to want to do it from my computer.
I think you have ultimate control.
I do. Well, then that's not a good thing. If I do my pointer, that's the thing. Okay, so Sandra, do you want to? I would like to turn this over to you because, for everybody to know on here, we have 2 employees at AZA, Joel Merriman and Sandra Elvin, who those 10 species have been divided up between. So sharks and rays lies with Sandra's purview, and so she's been working on this diligently for quite a while here, and I really would like her to explain where we are on all of this.
Sure, happy to jump in. So while we have, I understand that there's some connection issues, and I have a staff member here that's calling GoToMeeting right now. I know some people are trying to connect, and they're getting the message that the meeting is full. Just hang tight. We're working on it. We have an urgent call being put in, but I hope you can still call in and at least follow in verbally. And
hey, Sandra, I got that message and I was able to get on, so I think they've cleared it up.
Oh, good. Okay, that's a relief. Okay, so thank you for the keyboard and mouse control, Debbie.
Welcome.
So here's the overall process. So how we're getting from the work plan to the action plan. And the work plan is sort of it's an internal document that we've been working on. It's a giant Excel spreadsheet, and it has everything from the projects to the goals to the actions And what you see here is starting from the right to the left, the green are the projects, that's the tangerine color, those are the goals, and the
Could we have everybody on the phone mute their phones if possible, unless you have a question or a comment to make?
Thank you, folks. And then the actions are in the blue section. So going from the conservation work plan, it's quite important for us to be consistent with the SAFE cycle, and we need every single part of the work plan to be vetted by the partners and stakeholders and members. And as Debbie mentioned in the process, this is also remains adaptive. So as I go through the slide, you'll see how it turns back into itself. So from the conservation work plan vetted by member stakeholders and partners, stakeholders, and members, as we're doing here on this call, then we're going to put out the call for participation. And this is going to be on Friday, August 26th at noon. And this call for participation is going to go out to our entire community. And it's really to try to get folks on board as we identify project coordinators and the collaborators to work very closely with the coordinators, and of course funders as well, if anyone's interested in funding a specific project or goal or a series of actions. And as we go through that, then we have the high-level document, the Shark and Ray Conservation Action Plan, which is a dynamic plan. It will live online, and it's constantly being updated as we have new coordinators come on board. The logos are being put in place. And importantly, with the project coordinators, as we found works really well, is we have weekly calls with them, and they can tell myself and Joel, they can tell us what's working, what's not working. And from that, we can adapt the different actions to reflect better the goals and the projects. So the projects are pretty much set because those are the ones that are truly vetted by the partners, stakeholders, and members. But the actions are something that we can keep dynamic and adaptive. So you can see how this is a cycle that goes all the way around. So let's move into some of the details specific to the Shark and Ray Conservation Action Plan, so the projects. So this is the high-level overall vision of what we're trying to do. We're trying to achieve some populations of sharks and rays become sustainable. So we have 8 projects that are set out here. The first one is public engagement efforts are implemented to increase knowledge of sharks and the threats they face and provide measurable calls to action. Project 2 is individuals and businesses will purposefully consume and purchase products that do not include unsustainable shark products to eliminate markets of highly vulnerable species. Project 3, community-based programs are implemented to contribute to shark conservation and protection. Project 4, multimedia products are developed to increase public knowledge about sharks, issues affecting them, and the ways aquariums and zoos are working to conserve and protect them. Project 5, policy changes are optimized to positively influence the management of shark trade. Project 6, research projects are implemented to increase the sustainability of shark populations. And Project 7, the demographic and genetic health of the AZA Shark and Ray SSP programs are maximized. And number 8, conservation impact and efficacy is maximized through a collaborative and adaptive process that is applied throughout the CAP processes. Now, how are these all connected? You know, what are the themes? So what are we trying to achieve with SAFE? How do we move forward with the theory of change? Well, when we take a step back and we take that bird's eye view of all the projects, this is what we find. We find that they fall into different buckets. So the first 4 fall into that theme of public action. Then we have a policy and legislation specific bucket, specific theme, because especially for sharks and rays, there's a big gap there that we can hopefully fill. Some of the research, we are well aware that a lot of our AZA institutions, they've moved some research projects forward in some amazing ways, and we really want to capture that and help bolster that in the future. We want to involve the SSP programs as much as possible, and all of this falls under that adaptive management theme within the SAFE cycle. So I just want to warn you that the next few slides are rather busy. Don't be afraid. don't worry. We will give you an opportunity to comment on all of the projects and the goals and actions. And so we're really looking forward to your feedback as we move forward. And we're going to have a deadline of August 16th for you to give us that feedback. So I'm going to go through project by project so you can see what's really involved. And this is taking directly from the conservation work plan, so that giant Excel spreadsheet that we have this all together. So the first project
I'm going to interrupt you for one moment. I just want to make sure everybody on the call knows we tried to think of different titles for the project rather than project 1, 2, 3, and so forth. What we don't want to imply is that one project is more important than another. It's not. But if we go A, B, C, A is always going to come before C. So just know that if it's project 1 versus project 8, none of them are more important than another one. It's just a categorization for us to identify which projects we're talking about.
Thank you, Debbie. Project 1. This is the public engagement efforts are implemented to increase knowledge of sharks and threats they face. So really important messaging here, some educational opportunities. We want to keep messaging consistent across our institutions, but we also want to connect with our international communities as well. So we have some action items here that are directly related to collaborating or working closely with AZA or even our sister organizations, in China, the Chinese Association of Zoological Gardens. We want to involve WAZA as well. So really working closely with their communities and to develop, storyboards that are consistent, but they're also effective. And in that, we've also included some action items related to message testing. So the first two goals are educational messaging, and the second one are that measurable action, just to make sure that we're still going in the right direction. So next project here, project 2, also under the public action theme. So this has to do with consumption, and so we want to make sure that we're not supporting something by accident, the unsustainable shark products, and we want to find a way to eliminate the markets of the highly vulnerable species. So the first goal here has to do with a Know Where Your Seafood Comes From campaign. And this is to really increase public knowledge. Many people don't even know that fish and chips is often a shark species. So we want to get people on board with making educated choices. And the second one has to do with an awareness campaign to increase consumer knowledge about products that contain unsustainable shark byproducts. So really focusing on what folks could buy, what they have the power of consumer purchasing. So the next project. This project continues. It's quite a large project. It continues. And this has to do with traceability initiatives, this first one up here. We want to continue to work closely with traffic and our NOAA partners. They're developing some pretty amazing programs and really identifying ways to assist our U.S. Customs, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, USDA. Sometimes shark products come through our borders, and we want to make sure they're not labeled as baseball bats. We want to make sure they're labeled properly. So we want to promote that supply chain pretty well. The second goal here, still within the same project, this one here, this has to do with sort of an in-house kind of survey of what our own facilities are purchasing. So we want to make sure that we're modeling ways to incorporate sustainability into our own practices. And of course, the last one has to do with evaluation. We do want to measure the trends of consumer purchasing, making sure that all our messages are getting across, and they're getting across in our desired way. So project 3, still under public action. This has to do with community-based programs. So we want to identify who's doing what out there, and we want to work closely with them. There's been a program up here in the Chesapeake Bay called Save the Bay, Eat a Ray. These are considered sort of conflict programs. They're going against conservation. And we want to work, to kind of educate people in that realm, to tell them what's really going on out there, and how food works, food chain dynamics work. The second one has to do with optimal shark monitoring, and local enforcement programs are identified and developed. So again, there's a lot of programs out there that we could maybe involve in some training or some ID guides, those kinds of things. And then the last one is looking at feasibility of establishing a citizen science program. There's some out there already, Spot a Shark. There's the Great Egg Case Hunt. This Project Aware is doing some great stuff. So we want to work closely with them. We don't want to reinvent the wheel, but maybe there's a way that we can advance, a Shark Watch or similar type program and put our resources in that way. So the next project, still under public action, this has to do with multimedia. So we know that there's a lot of great media options out there, a lot of films that have been produced in the past, but there hasn't been one that has kind of promoted AZA in a way that shows how connected our institutions are in terms of shark education. So the first thing we want to do is we want to kind of take a tally, see what's out there and see what's continually being used. There are probably some films, from the 80s that are still being shown. And then we want to see what are the gaps and where can we bring out some new multimedia products. We want to develop them and, of course, distribute them. And we want to promote that in a way that kind of highlights our institutions. Maybe we have a documentary where it's following a young Ray that is born in an aquarium, or and we have a child that's also coming, and they kind of grow up together. So that's sort of the idea behind this third goal here, with a new shark film produced and distributed for and by AZA institutions. And of course, the evaluation program, the last goal here. So Project 5, this has to do with the policy side of things, quite a difficult area. But so we've taken an approach where we've had most of our actions support changes to U.S. legislation in favor of shark conservation. So for those of you familiar with the Global Shark and Ray Initiative, they've really taken quite a massive global viewpoint, and they haven't really honed in on the U.S. Side of things, what can be done in terms of policy changes. So this is an area that we can really step in, use our advocacy roles to continue to move something forward. Like, for example, there's a few species that have been proposed for CITES. We can choose to support them, show how we're engaged in that International Shark Conservation Policy Forum. So this is the U.S. side up here, and this is the international side down here. So Project 6, that has to do with research. So here is focusing on both the in situ and ex situ research projects that AZA and partners play key roles in. So we want to work closely with the Marine Fishes Tag group to identify what ex situ and in situ research projects that are currently underway, and we can do gap analysis and then prioritize future needs. We'd like to look to securing funding to bolster those projects and then implement some new ones. And then down here, the second goal here has to do with supporting the priorities of the GSRI, and also some species-specific plans like the conservation strategy for sawfish and other plans that are out there. This would be largely up to the project coordinator and their collaborators to really bring out which are the species-specific plans that we want to work within. The next project, this is the SSP theme. So we don't want to isolate this at all. So we'd love to work very closely with the SSPs. So there's been some phenomenal work that's been done already, and we really want to optimize that. So we want to assess what are some of the current challenges facing the SSP programs, how can we work with them. We have a line item here, 121, organize and conduct a strategic planning workshop for the Shark and Ray SSPs to learn from each other, to investigate challenges and figure out some priorities and how we can continue to work with them together. And then we have some optimal husbandry care welfare practices identified and implemented for sharks and rays. And this is where I'm actually going to turn it back over to Debbie for a discussion on some of the aspects that we've heard within the last month of how we're going to figure this out a little bit. So Debbie, back to you. Oh, Debbie?
Oh, sorry, I was on mute while I was talking away. I muted myself like I asked others, sorry. So you'll notice that there are a couple of lines, 123 and 126, which are highlighted in yellow. And we did this on purpose because this has been a discussion that's been ongoing. We recognize that there's the Elastomeric Brain Husbandry Manual, which is an excellent document and doesn't need to be reinvented. And in no way do we imply that it needs to be reinvented. However, I do want to bring this to your attention to see if these belong in here or not, and this is something you can provide comments back when you review this document. Because one of the things that we've been working on within AZA itself, outside of SAFE, of course, are the animal care manuals. And Beth and I have had this conversation several times about the Elastomeric Brain husbandry manual and how good it is, and not needing to reinvent it. But if there is a way to take some of the components of that document and cite it, just copy and paste it and put it into the AZA manual template, which includes a lot of other things in it beyond what is included in the Elasmo Grant Husbandry Manual. It has the AZA accreditation standards and research areas and a variety of different things. I will tell you that one of the things that we're seeing in the last 2 years, particularly in this past year, is all of our husbandry manual, all of our animal care manuals are being translated into Spanish. Our sister organizations are doing that because they found them so valuable and they want to translate all of them. Several of them have been translated into, or are being translated into, Japanese and Chinese, and having it in Chinese would be fantastic. But there are sister organizations in those regions. We've also seen a huge uptick in the number of openings of those documents from our website, in the thousands, and we get quite a few compliments on them moving forward, especially tied into AZA with AZA accreditation standards and the way the chapters are designed for zoos and aquariums that way. So it's something to think about. In no way am I even thinking about rewriting everything. It would be cutting and pasting pieces that make sense into the AZA manual, and then if there are other areas in the AZA care manual that need to be filled in, that might be a little bit of additional content, but something to think about. And I wanted to draw it out purposely because I know it's been a discussion in the past, and so I really look forward to hearing back from all of you on what your thoughts are on that.
Hey, Deb. While we're on this point, this point in particular was one that, to be honest with you, is one that we tend to just blush over and say, yeah, that's great, but for the reasons you just mentioned, we're not even going to address that. Typically, that's the approach, and if we're talking honestly. I think that one of the biggest challenges we have is regarding the animal care manuals, or the documents that AZA wants us to develop, is that we've got thousands of animals in our purview. I think that there needs to be a discussion on what the priority would be if we were to go to this. And I think the TAG would be very appreciative of having an honest discussion with everything on the table about exactly what form those animal care manual documents take with regard to the species that are in our purview, because one of the challenges of the tags that have been successful in doing this is trying to put a square peg into a round hole. And if we could make it easier for these to be developed and have some understanding of what we would address and what we wouldn't, and what some things we don't feel comfortable providing, because we just don't know it for certain, I think that would be the first step to maybe moving us towards that. But I think those discussions are some that if we could move towards those, I think that would be a good step to making that a possibility.
Absolutely, and it'll only make them stronger, so that's fine. Yeah, absolutely.
Certainly. Okay, thank you. Just wanted to kind of put that in.
Yep, nope, absolutely. So that's one of the reasons why I wanted to specifically call that out, so that we can have that frank discussion and figure out what would be the best way to move forward with this. Or if everybody is absolutely adamant that we don't move forward, then we don't. But I think we would be missing the boat on some key areas, particularly in Asia and so forth, moving forward. But we can talk about it. But I really, really want everybody on the line to be honest in their opinions on this with us, because that's the only way we're going to be able to figure it out and make it strong. Okay, Sandra, moving on.
Yes. Okay. Oh. Let me get to the, oh, there we go, as controls. Well, when we get it going, the next project is Project 8, and that's the Adaptive Management Project, and it's a large project. Oh, whoops, moved a little too fast. There we go. So lots of actions, lots of goals in here, and this project is quite consistent across all of our safe species. So this is actually a project that we would not be looking for coordinators because we're gonna keep it within AZA staff because it has a lot to do with coordinating with all the coordinators, touching base with all the collaborators, setting up the AZA network community. That's, when you log into AZA, on your left you see the My Network. So we have network communities for different species, for the projects, for the coordinators themselves. This has to do with also with cataloging all the efforts that all of our members are doing and promoting them in a consistent way on our website and the critical actions to date, the projects. So all that kind of stuff. And most importantly, the very last line, develop subsequent 3-year cap. So just re-emphasizing that our caps don't just end in 2018, when they have a 3-year limit. They are continual. There's so much work to do with these species, and our intention is not to just drop them after we're done 3 years. Lots more to do afterwards. So a couple weeks ago, we had introduced a smaller group in the Conservation Work Plan, and we just wanted to show that we've taken all of your comments to heart, and we've made a lot of changes. This is a summary of the major modifications that we've done. Some were quite small, but I just wanted to call out, the different lines so you can go right there so you can see exactly how we made these modifications. So the first one had to do with listing U.S. Customs, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, USDA, which I mentioned previously, specifically in there, so adapted line 43. There was another comment about alternative income opportunities, so that was adapted. We needed an action, and this was a fantastic comment because we hadn't considered this before, but speaking to the sustainability of the ornamental trade, and AZA definitely has a role in that. So we adapted line 47 for that. Common question, how will we coordinate activities that already exist within the AZA framework? And so, not stretching our participants too thin, so we adapted line 98 to consider that comment. We have a stronger role for the marine fishes tag, the program leaders, so we adapted line...
Just a second, Sandra, on line number 98.
Sure.
The collaborative elasmobranch census is something that we've been wanting to get rolling here, and we were hoping that more institutions would have jumped into the collaborative record keeping and we wouldn't have to do a census. But I want to be careful in the language on your last sentence there.
Here's the line 103 here?
In 98.
98?
Yeah. While we will be reaching out to researchers, I'm not necessarily sure that it would be in even collaboration with the American Elasmobranch Society. Certainly, the census would include researchers that are holding elasmobranchs in captivity, and we would have to determine what that definition of holding is to be included in the census, because some researchers hold animals for a couple of months and then release them. Should that be included in a census of human care and husbandry of these animals? So there's some definitions there that we need to work out, but this has been on the tags hit list for some time now.
So Beth, when you're looking at the adaptations that were made, you might even want to add in an action item, a suggested item that says first to come up with consistent terminology and definitions.
Okay.
And that, again,
and I just want to make it clear that we would be reaching out and partnering with the Elasmobranch Society as a means of making sure that we not only gather AZA and non-AZA institutions, but also the research community.
Right.
So something to think about that's the collaboration.
When you think about these projects and you're reviewing them, recognize that the projects themselves are probably going to stay consistent for the 3 years. The goals identified in them are probably going to stay consistent through the 3 years. The action items, those ones in blue, those very detailed action items, what we found with all the other safe species, and this is the 5th of the 4 that are have been completed, is that those action items will change. They'll adapt, they'll evolve. It may be that once you get a coordinator in for that project and they start identifying and working with the collaborators one-on-one, that they'll recognize that some of those action items were either done and aren't needed, or we forgot 5 steps along the way and they add them in there, or you evolve them. So that will be part of the group that everybody will be involved in, and they can shape that better to make sure we meet what we're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, because I think that partnership is important, but if we're looking at this with regards to captive management, we have to make sure that that we're focusing on. I guess I'm getting confused a little bit here in my messaging. I just want to make sure that we're focused on what we make sure that we realize what we're focusing on and what that census will look like.
Mm-hmm. So add a line item that does define those things, kind of thing.
And we had discussed this, Deb, at AES with the president of AES, that basically the marine fish tag would sort of own this census and share the data with them. And the people who will be coordinating it are marine fish tag members. So they seem fine with that. They haven't had it on their books in years, and a lot of people ask about it. So they're fine with us basically taking the ball and running with it. So
excellent, excellent, great. Sandra?
So we're good. Okay. Yeah. Just want to make sure there weren't any other comments on that. Okay. So thank you, Beth. I think I tried to capture everything that you said, but I'll touch base with you offline if you don't mind, just to make sure that I've captured the language properly in those lines. Okay, so the next comment was, so should we include in this the conservation strategy for sawfish, which was great. So that's where we changed the species-specific language. We didn't just make it just the GSRI, we included all the others. So that was lines 108 to 109 that were adapted. The next comment was about the list of research projects. So figuring out what's already been done, what can we champion as being of high quality and high priority. So that's line 103 was adapted for that. And then line 8. So we moved the SSP comment that was given to us about wanting to establish an International Sawfish Awareness Day and move that actually into the public action, public engagement project that we have. So line 8 was adapted for that one.
And update on that, Sandra. Just heard from the folks yesterday. We're looking at, everybody's reaching out to their stakeholders right now, but looking at possibility of August 5th, which would be a year from today, would be the first one. And if we can get everybody's stakeholders across the borders on board with that, we're sort of in a comment period on that right now, then we would announce that during our talk at IAC.
Wow, wonderful.
And maybe even with some posters to pass out and whatever. So.
Oh, that's great. Thank you, Paula.
Yeah, you're welcome. It had a lot of movement on Twitter right after that talk. People seem to be very excited about that. So.
Good, good. Okay, so also from the comments that we heard in the last couple of weeks, were very, very key, very important questions that came out of it. So let me just move ahead forward. So these are some of the questions and answers that we received. There's 2 slides of this, so we'll just go over them. So the first one is, how will the SSPs align with the program? Will they have a more involved role outside of the scope of the SSPs? And certainly, the SSP leaders can become very important collaborators on projects, and we're still following that one plan approach, so it's a really great way to keep that going. The next one was about facilities taking on ownership of the goals, or does it have to rely within the marine fishes tag? Well, SAFE is really supposed to be that new approach to collaboration. So project coordinators will essentially serve as the hub, and of course we'll have support from the organizations. But they are simply just that. They are coordinating, and they'll have collaborators from many different institutions, and together they form that project team. And just to note that while coordinators have to be AZA members, collaborators don't, so they can also be non-AZA members. And so the project team together, everyone together, will have that ownership of that project, and they're working together to get those blue action items accomplished. The next comment was about education.
Hey, and Sandra, I just wanted to say that the tag totally supports that there's no way that the tag can be anywhere a part of all of this, and we're totally supportive of that approach to getting this work done.
Great, great. Yeah, it would be a lot for them to handle. It'd be quite a lot. So the next one has to do with education material produced and use messaging, if it's going to be consistent. So again, that falls back to the project team. We want resource development to be distributed as they see fit, and as institutions would allow or would like. So we'll keep that going that way.
And that differs between species, honestly, as we've moved forward with the different signature species. It takes a little bit different approach for each species and what that species needs.
Mm-hmm. So the next one was specific to Sawfish, just highlighting the citizen science projects that are already established. So we made those modifications to the work plan because it's true, you know, we don't want to reinvent the wheel, but we do want to support them. So again, it would be up to the project team to continually identify the relevant programs that they would like to partner with. Next question had to do with identifying partners in other regions, and absolutely. Wonderful, be great. The more global we get, the better. And of course, is it beneficial to consult with the AZA education committees? And this is definitely recommended as a partnership. But again, it falls back to the project team to see what they feel is relevant and appropriate. So just questions and answers continued. So this first comment had to do with combining the messaging with some of the other species, like coral reef messaging, or even sea turtles, which is another safe species, and partnering, of course, with the IUCN specialist groups. So certainly, of course, we highly encourage that, and we can certainly bring them on board as collaborators. Next one also has to do with messaging resources available to use in whole or in part. And again, it's up to the project team to see what they feel is appropriate to distribute. But members are not required, but you know, it's certainly encouraged and highly recommended. The next question had to do with sustainability collection initiatives. Very important question. Do we know exactly where all our sharks and rays are coming from? Can we say they are from sustainable populations? So I just put the link here because we do have this new website, and it might be difficult to find where our approved policies are. So we have the white papers and the statements on sustainability collection. But this would also be an action item under the one of the projects to make sure that that this is actually occurring. So who will be charged with soliciting funds? Very important question, always comes up. And this is a combination of AZA staff, the campaign steering committee, which is led by Greg Hudson, up to the coordinators, and essentially, you know, the whole project team. They might hear of a granting agency that's interested in picking this up, and it'd be perfectly appropriate to apply that for a grant for that. And who's evaluating the progress?
Sandra, I was going to jump in for a second on this one.
Sure.
With the new changes on the website, there's also new changes on AZA networks, which are, I think they're being called AZA communities now, and they have a lot more power for communications within groups. And so we have established a coordinators community where the coordinators between species, so all the coordinators for the projects within a species, but also between species, can communicate with one another. And so already we're seeing some instances of coordinators collaborating with each other to work across projects or across species on certain things that are similar, such as education messaging, linking them up to other NGOs that might be willing to contribute certain things like design layouts and printing for free as in-kind donations to SAFE. So it allows those coordinators to talk with each other to become much more effective and efficient. Just so you know that we have those pieces of infrastructure under development, and some of them are in place already.
Thank you, Debbie. So the last question was about evaluating the progress as these projects and actions move forward. So you've heard me talk a little bit about how they are integrated as action items within the projects. So it would be up to the project team, the coordinator and collaborators, but also very importantly in our Project 8, the AZA staff via the Adaptive Management Project. So that sort of wraps us up here. And here's some important dates for you to keep in mind. So please do send your feedback to me. There's my email, selvin@aza.org, by Tuesday, August 16th. So about a week and a half or so. And the reason why such a quick turnaround on that is because we do want to hold the call for participation for all of our institutions. It'd be great to walk into annual with people thinking about it, thinking about what roles they want to take on, whether coordinator or collaborator. So that would be Friday, August 26th, and we just sent the note out yesterday to our VP External Affairs here, to Rob, for him to start disseminating the message that we're going to host that webinar on at noon on Friday, August 26th. Also, keep in mind that we have the Safe Sharks meeting. It'll be 1 hour from 10 to 11 a.m. on Wednesday, September 7th. And then some contact information. So you have Debbie's email there, and we have the safesharks@aza.org email as well. So are there any questions or comments moving forward?
So Sandra, how would you would like people to individually send you emails with, because this will be made available to everybody, we'll be sending this out to everybody, this presentation, and the recording will be available online. Are there any particular instructions on how you would like to receive that?
Unfortunately, we had some technical glitches last time when I created the form out of the PowerPoint. So I'll send this PowerPoint as a PDF to folks, and feel free to comment on the PDF or create a Word with your comments. So it makes it easy with the line items. You can say, line 1 of 5, I feel should be this way, or consider this. So that way I can compile them all into one large document with all the feedback, and then we can make the changes accordingly. So if that works for everybody, or feel free to call me too.
Sandra, I personally want to thank you for incorporating so many of the comments I saw as you were flipping through the slides. There were a lot of comments from the Marine Fishes Tag that I thought were very thoughtful from a lot of our people who reviewed the webinar, and it's really nice to see that that you guys are reaching out and incorporating some of these ideas. There's a lot of people who have a lot of really good experience in our group, and they're very thoughtful in their responses, and it means a lot that you guys are listening to that and including that in this.
Well, thank you, Paula.
Thank you for saying that, and it is very important to us. To me, that is the beauty of SAFE, is having that collaborative conservation. I don't think we can get to a place where absolutely everybody is happy about absolutely everything, but the closer we can get, the better. And you're absolutely right. Everybody on this call has so much experience with sharks and rays, and it would be just silly of us not to incorporate everybody's opinions and thoughts to make this as strong as possible moving forward. So when we ask you for your feedback by the 16th, we really mean it. We want it back. You saw the result of the meeting from a couple of weeks ago when we got feedback from everybody. We tried to put everything in there we possibly could, and we'll do the same thing with your comments. Once we get that back, we'll refine it and incorporate everything from you, and then those will be our projects for the next 3 years. And it's really exciting, and we'll start looking for funding for it and looking for collaborators and start moving forward, which is really, really exciting. And that's what that call for participation will be on the 26th. It will be presenting what the projects are to the AZA community, and start to look for funding, start to look for those coordinators and collaborators. Any other thoughts or comments from anyone?
Just ditto on what Paula says, and thanks everybody for being here.
Yes, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you
everyone.
all. Have a great day.
Thanks, Deb. Bye.
Bye-bye.